Can't decide and torn between a romantic, comedy, action, or an indie film to watch for the weekend? Well. Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast is your ultimate guide to the latest movies. Join us as we dissect the latest on the blockbusters. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Movie Podcast, brought to you by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Staci.
And I'm your co-host, Sarah.
And today we're talking about two vampire films.
Oh.
Because.
That's
the timing of
I don't know,
things.
I thought we'd moved on from vampires in popular culture. That, you know, they not completely moved on, but...
Can you move? I mean, I know there was probably periods of time where vampires weren't a thing, but I feel like for the past...
I guess they're just not quite as
15
much
years.
of a thing.
It's just like they keep coming up.
Yes.
They keep coming up.
Yes.
So the first film today is Hotel Transylvania 3. And full disclosure, I did not see Hotel Transylvania 1 or 2.
I did.
Did you?
Yes.
Did you like them?
I did. I'm trying to remember. I liked the first one better. Second one, I liked it okay.
I just didn't want to see them. I thought they looked stupid. I was just like, yeah, is this what children's film has come to?
I have nieces, so that helps. You know, I can see children's movies with children and, you know, kind of enjoy it through their eyes, which is fun. And they laughed a lot.
Well, and it was so interesting because this one starts off with Adam Sandler, who does the voice of Dracula, and his monster buddies dressed as like little old women traveling on a train. I have no idea why.
So they don't get recognized.
I guess, but where are they going on this train? It's not clear, and it's supposed to be, you know, 100 or so years ago.
Oh.
But whatever. And immediately my first thought, because there is a mummy and a Frankenstein and a werewolf and an invisible person who is maybe or maybe not a ghost, I'm not sure.
He's the Invisible Man.
Okay. But I put him in as a ghost in my head, and my immediate thought was Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School.
Yeah.
Which has the daughters of all those people working
And
together.
which one of my nieces dressed up as one of the characters from Ghoul School for Halloween one year. She was the mummy
nice.
girl. She was adorable.
Aww. Yeah, Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, I won't even say it's a good film, but I have I have a nostalgic place in my heart for it.
Yes.
So I was thinking, I was like, is this just a thing? Are these like the classic monsters that they keep putting together? Or why do we keep having the same like clique of monsters together? I don't know. But that was my first thought when I saw it, and it took me a moment to be like, nope, not the film we're watching. Get back to this. So in this film, Dracula runs a hotel, and the whole first one is about his daughter meeting her not at all a monster now husband.
Right.
And in this one, she decides that he's been working too hard and needs a break, so she's going to take him on a vacation.
Now, when I think summer vacation, I think of sunshine because it's summer.
Right.
And I think this is not a good thing for vampires. Where are they going to go?
So she, while thinking of, oh, what can I do for dad? He seems a bit stressed out. There is a wonderfully conveniently timed ad on the TV for a monster cruise.
Nice.
Because these are things, evidently. It's the first one.
Well, it has to be the first one because they kind of came out in the first movie that, you know, they were in hiding.
Did they?
That's why they have the hotel. The hotel was built as a safe place for monsters to go and be away from humans.
Okay.
And then they, through various circumstances, had to come out, and the people were like, "We love monsters. You guys are awesome."
Okay.
So now they're out.
All right. That explained it, because the captain of the cruise ship is human, and she admits it, and they know it, and she knows they're monsters, and I'm just like, is this like an underground thing where certain people know there are monsters? But okay, that explains it now. So it's supposed to be a family fun vacation, and by that means we evidently take everyone from the hotel. Because the entire cruise line seems to be all the monsters from the hotel, both the Ghoul School group and just everybody else. There is, her son Dennis has a giant dog named Tinkles, who is problematic.
Because he tinkles?
I don't know. He bursts into things and he's very excited. I think he's supposed to be a puppy, but he's like giant. Like it made me think of a mix of like Totoro and the giant baby from Spirited Away.
Oh wow!
It's just like, what
is the little old lady that eats everything in this version the one that just eats things and then says, "I didn't do that"?
No.
Oh man,
I don't know who that is.
I love her.
Didn't see her. But so anyways, they go on this cruise. And it turns out that the captain of this cruise actually has an ulterior motive. Because she is a Van Helsing, and the Van Helsings have been trying to kill Dracula for generations. That's what the whole thing on the train at the beginning is about, is that starts this montage of one of the Van Helsings, who is the captain's, Erica's great-grandfather, his various attempts to try and kill Dracula, and he always fails, and he's very furious about this. So he raised Erica to also hate monsters. Right. And they've created this cruise as a way to try and trap them and destroy them. But Dracula he zings. This is evidently a thing.
Yep.
For Erica. And so she decides to take advantage of that and goes on a date with him while also trying to kill him. And yeah. Nice. And then, crazy monster stuff ensues.
As it always does.
It does.
Yes. In fact, they sing a song about zinging in the first one.
Do they?
After the daughter zings for the human boy.
Oh, okay. Because, I thought it must have come up in the first one because it's so common knowledge in this one that everyone knows what zinging is. So I was like, okay, that must have been what the whole first one was.
He zinged for his wife, who is the daughter's mother and who died. And I think she was killed by an angry mob, which is what precipitated the whole monster hotel being hidden from humans, etc.
And that's part of his struggle is, I'm not even sure he's too upset about Erica being a human, but the fact that he believes, A, you can only zing once, and then B, how will his daughter feel for him zinging for someone who's not her mother?
Right.
So he tries to hide it for a while from his daughter that he's, he likes Erica and he's going out on a date with her. And the daughter, of course, finds out because that never works.
No.
I mean, I imagine that must work sometimes in real life, but in movies, it never works.
Never works.
If you are in a movie, do not even assume that no, that's just a bad plan. If you know you're in a movie like Deadpool. But anyways, so again, I went into this with not even low expectations, almost no expectations. I was just like, A, is this theater going to be full of little children? And B, is this going to be like the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life?
Right.
To which the answer is not exactly in both cases.
Okay.
There were children there, but there were also a number of adults who didn't seem to have children with them who also went to see this film. So I was like, okay, so it's not just me who's childless here and, seems suspicious. But then also, this film wasn't as horrendous as I thought it would be.
Good. Well, and it's the third one, so that's always a little tricky. You never know going in. Even if you had seen and loved the first two, that third one, you got to go into it being like, I mean, Toy Story seems to be the exception. Everybody I've talked to loves Toy Story 3, and basically bawled through the last 15 minutes of it or whatever.
I mean, I will say I like Die Hard 3, but that's a totally different thing. They definitely changed a lot going into that, but it may be, again, that might be, I've seen it 20 times. So, but anyway, so for this, when it started, I was very much like, I didn't like a lot of the jokes. I thought it was, we're definitely aiming at a lower sense of humor, but also our target audience is younger. So whatever. I was just like, oh, seriously, is this going to be all an hour and however many minutes like this? But then I did sort of start to get into it and like it a bit. They have to fly to get to the cruise ship because they have to, I'm not sure why, the cruise ship will pick them up at the Bermuda Triangle because no scary thing can, it's like Addams Family all over again. Bermuda Triangle is fantastic. The airline is Gremlin Air, and so it's run by gremlins, and it's that whole level of, that's kind of how you would expect gremlins to run an airline. And I kind of enjoyed that. And then we get to when they're on the cruise, Adam Sandler at first totally doesn't want to do it. And then he decides he's actually going to try and enjoy himself. And so you get this montage of him essentially dancing his way around the ship, set to Bruno Mars's 24 Karat Magic. And I was just like, you know what? Okay. Yeah, I am down for that. That's actually pretty good. All right. Oh. And I think that is my favorite moments in this film have music in them. And it's not, you know, I only like things with music in them, but the music choices for these scenes were pretty great because you get this montage of him and then Blobby joins him dancing around the ship. But you also have this montage while they're doing this of the different ways Erica's trying to kill him. And of course, again, with this whole monster thing of monsters are just like us, that doesn't work. So you get him, you know, avoiding all these ridiculous things while the song is still playing and he's grooving around. I'm like, okay, that's actually kind of funny. I laughed a couple of times during that scene. I was like, okay. But then you also then later, when it comes to the big sort of, you know, everything comes out into a light and we're really trying to kill the monsters and we reveal the secret plan that the Van Helsings have to finally destroy the monsters. There's another scene with the music, and I won't spoil it just because I think it's so fantastic. But you get this sort of set of music songs, and the choices for those were all so wonderful. I was laughing out loud and like clapping my hands because I do that when I get to a certain level of laughing. And I was just like, okay, you know what? That at least that is worth like the last, you know, 30 minutes or so when I wasn't really laughing as much. That scene, okay, fine. I quite liked that. But beyond that, this film is by, do you know the animation company?
Let me look. I was just on IMDb, but now I've moved away. Let's see. And now I'm on the wrong screen.
Well, while she's doing that, the reason I ask is because you do see a character who is part mostly machine. Mm-hmm. They were human, and then they were adjusted to be mostly machine with their organs so they could keep going. But that somehow equates to their neck can really stretch a long way because it's in a tube. I'm like, that's not how... body, just because you replaced your heart and spleen and liver does not mean your neck is suddenly stretchable,
it's
but whatever.
It's an animated movie. It's not going to be accurate.
Well, no, here's the thing, though. It threw me off because it reminded me quite a bit of the boss level King Candy from Wreck-It Ralph. Mm-hmm. After he's had his change and suddenly his neck can stretch a lot. I kept thinking of that the whole film. I was like, oh, I've seen that. I've seen that sort of, that animation thing with that long neck. What is that from? And it kept taking me out of the film because I was like, A, your character shouldn't be able to do that, but also B, I've seen this. What is this from? Like, so yeah, that's why I wanted to know who,
oh, God forbid they should just put it on here.
How
I mean, it says Columbia, but I don't think that means that's
not
the, you know, but
like my first guess is
tell me.
DreamWorks, but I have no idea. But anyways, the animation style is
Sony Pictures Animation. I don't know what that means. If, you know, if there's something under Sony.
I mean, there's probably 20 something things under Sony.
Right.
But yeah, so I'm not sure. The animation is, I mean, I'm pretty sure it stays with the style that they established in the first two films. Mm-hmm. It's not meant to be anywhere near believable because monsters. Mm-hmm. It was fun at times. Erica's animation is interesting and she's always in white for some reason. Like, she's the captain of the ship, but then even when she's, like, dresses up for a date, it's still a somewhat white outfit. And then when she goes on a thing where she's looking for an artifact, it's still a white scuba dive. I'm like,
isn't Dracula always in black?
Right? It seems like we have to have the characters all be the same, or else the children won't recognize them. But as an adult, I'm just like, really? You only have one color in your closet? Okay, fine. But
if it were me, it would not be white because I would have a filthy wardrobe all the time.
Yeah.
I don't think I can wear white on a regular basis.
White makes me nervous. I've never actually had too much of a problem with the few things I have had that are white, but I'm always so afraid I'll spill something on it. That I'm just like, this is not worth the like anxiety I have while wearing this shirt or whatever. So I don't have very many white things. I thought it was a fun film. It's definitely not, you know, it's certainly much more aimed at kids.
Sure.
And kids probably of a not quite mature age group. But there are some, you know, animated films that are, yeah, okay, this is an animated film, but the humor works just as well for adults. This, for most of it, didn't work for me. I could tell there were some scenes that I was supposed to laugh at, And I was just like, move on. Just move on. Let's go back to the Bruno Mars montage. Like something. Let's get away from whatever we're supposed to be doing here. But overall, enjoyable enough that I wasn't completely miserable at the end of it. Is that a recommendation?
It's not a great recommendation.
I would say
it's a recommendation.
Okay, my recommendation for this, I don't know that I would pay music for it, but if I didn't already know about the...
Did you just say pay music for it?
I'm sorry, pay money for it. But if I did... Can you pay music? Anyways, if I didn't know about the final music scene, I would want to see that. Just the final music scene on TV. Like, that was... the best part for me is, and again, I'm trying not to spoil what that is.
So basically you're saying if you were flipping through channels and that scene was on, you'd definitely stop.
I would stop enough to be like, what is this? And then I would be like, okay, that was kind of funny, whatever that was, and move on after it was over. Or if you happen to be late because you're in traffic and you come in like halfway through this film, you're actually possibly lucky because you're closer to that awesome music scene and you get to skip a good portion of the not funny jokes. So that's actually not a bad thing. I know I'm giving a very strange does she like it or doesn't she recommendation. I like the music scenes. The scenes I liked had music. That's my whatever. The music scenes for this were great. Other than that,
sigh.
The sigh.
Stacy gives it a big sigh.
A big sigh, but then clapping for music. So we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Movie Podcast. Our second vampire-themed film today is What We Do in the Shadows. And
sounds ominous.
Well, it's
or
actually
slightly dirty. I'm not really sure.
Well, they're vampires, so they can't be in the sunlight.
Exactly.
So they can't be what we do, at noon. We're sleeping. But so this, I think I was conflating a couple of things in my head when I first went into this, because I thought it was going to be like a scripted fictional movie, just, a regular movie, but with vampires. And I think I was conflating it with, I want to call it Roommates, but I'm not sure what that's called. It was a British TV show, and then they brought it to a version to America where there's like a ghost and a vampire and a werewolf.
It's called Being Human.
Being Human, yeah. So in my head, I was thinking it was like that. This is actually a mockumentary about vampires.
Nice.
It is very interesting. So you start where it's like, the New Zealand Documentary Authority or whatever, and I'm just like, the what? They're acting like they're filming a documentary for these vampires as this great vampire celebration, the Unholy, I've forgotten what it is. The Unholy Masquerade, excuse me. The Unholy Masquerade is coming up, and the vampires, as the time leads up to the Unholy Masquerade, and then you get this like title card of the filmmakers wore crucifixes and had the vampires word that they wanted to attack them in order to film this documentary. And I'm like, okay. And so as you get it, since again, at first I thought it was fictional, but like the very first thing you see from a vampire is Viago doing that typical vampire straight board lean up move out of his coffin, but he's totally looking at the camera as he does it. So I'm like, what?
Wait a minute, you're breaking the fourth wall.
Right? You are looking straight at the camera and in a very sort of dorky way. What is this? And then you go, this is set in New Zealand, and he has vampire flatmates. There is Viago, who was a bit of a dandy. There is, I think he's supposed to essentially be Dracula, Vlad, who is a bit of a sort of Casanova. Mm-hmm. And then there's Peter, who doesn't speak but is very clearly styled off of Nosferatu.
Okay.
And lives in a like stone coffin in the basement, and even they are scared of him.
Oh jeez.
And then there is the fourth vampire, whose name I'm just blanking on. Deacon, who is considered the youngest and therefore the most immature. And one of the first things you get is they want to have a flat meeting. He goes to ask Peter, and Peter like doesn't say anything, but Peter's that terrifying that he's like, okay, you know what? If you come, that's fine. If you don't want to come, that's fine. Here's a live chicken. And because Peter is just terrifying. There is a conversation during this flat meeting over not doing flat chores. Yes. Deacon has not done the dishes, which is his flat chore, except Deacon has not done the dishes in 5 years.
Yes, I am currently watching the trailer without sound, and I just saw the please clean me notes on the dishes.
And it's so great because, they're talking. Some of the things are just regular, this is what happens when you live with people, but they're vampires. So it's like, Vlad's like, man, I'm so embarrassed when I bring people over because of all those dishes. And Deacon responds, why? When you bring them over, you're going to kill them anyways.
Right. And what do they have dishes for anyway? They're eating people.
Right. It's just, so you get it in this very sort of, it's a mockumentary. It's supposed to be a documentary. So they're not supposed to be, super cool and knowing what they're doing. They end up, Deacon has a familiar who wants to become a vampire, and he supposedly has promised her that, but it's been several years, and so she's frustrated with him, but still doing his bidding in the hope he'll make her a vampire. He asks her to bring some virgins to the house, so she brings 2 people over who she thinks are virgins, and one of them is Nick, who ends up becoming a vampire himself.
Okay.
Not on purpose. It's not quite clear why. He ends up getting attacked by Peter. And I love the response when that happens. They're all trying to kill Nick, and he's running through the house trying to escape. And then he makes it outside just to be attacked by Peter. And the others are like, Peter got him. Who let him out?
I love that the scariest vampire's name is Peter.
Right? Yeah. So in this, there's a lot of things. They're preparing for the Unholy Masquerade. There keeps being this, reference to the Beast, which is Vlad's arch nemesis, which we later find out is actually just his ex-girlfriend, but he calls her the Beast because clearly their breakup was not great. Nick becomes a part of their flat because he was turned by one of the vampires there, so he has to sort of stay with them. But Nick is a bit of a idiot. Not an idiot. He's not dumb. He just does dumb things. So when they go out, they keep going out at night trying to get into clubs. Nick tells a bunch of people he's a vampire because whatever, including one person who responds, oh yeah, I'm a vampire hunter. Nick doesn't believe him, but he's like, okay, we'll Skype later. And then that vampire hunter ends up coming to the house trying to kill them because he actually was a vampire hunter. And it's just like, dude, what?
Wow.
There are also other creatures in this because, of course, there are.
Sure.
So there are werewolves, and we get again, vampires and werewolves don't get along sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So when they're like out in a group going around at night prowling, they come across a group of werewolves, and at least one of them is kind of drunk. So they start sort of, bad talking each other.
Okay.
I love the werewolves because their leader is trying to make them act a bit more civilized. So they have this thing they keep saying where it's like, we're werewolves, not swearwolves. So they're not supposed to cuss. It's so great. They keep repeating it. It's like every time someone cusses, werewolves, not swearwolves. It's just like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? And I mean, this clearly wasn't the biggest budget of film.
Sure.
Because the special effects, and I think it might be camera angles more than anything else. When they're supposed to make it like the vampires can move really fast, that's actually pretty believable.
Okay.
Like I would have thought they had CGI'd that or something. You just saw him down the hall, but now he's in front of you. But I think that must be more, stopping the camera and camera angles. But it's done really well. Like, even when Nick is trying to escape the house and running through, that's actually a really good scene because I cannot tell where they cut and how they did it. Mm-hmm. But then at other times, like the vampires can fly, that's clearly wires. You can tell they're on wires and not used to being on wires. It's somewhat awkwardly done. When you see the werewolves transform, also not the greatest. So it's got this sort of low budget feel to it, but I think, I'm not sure if they were going for that or if they were just like, you know what, this is our budget. Let's just make the best of that, because when you get to, and I'm not quite sure why this is even the case, Viago brings a girl home that he's going to drink her blood. Mm-hmm. And during the flat meeting, he had actually complained about drinking blood on the couch and making a mess on the couch. Right. Can you at least put newspapers on the floor before you do that? So you see him talking to her. And while she's talking, he's like lifting her feet up to put newspapers underneath. And I'm like, okay, I know where this is going. She probably thinks he's just crazy.
Right.
But then even though he's supposed to be, several hundreds of years old, the way he bites her neck, he like hits her main artery or whatever. And so you just get all this gushing blood out. And it's just like, on the one hand, I laughed out loud, but then later it's like, wait, why are you so bad at drinking blood? How many centuries are you? And he does this at least twice, where he drinks blood in the most terrible way, and then you see him later just completely, his clothes are all red and dripping. It's just like...
And I bet he got it on the couch.
Oh, yeah. But it's clearly, like, the blood splurting is obviously, obviously fake.
Right.
But I think they were just going with that aesthetic of, this is going to be obviously fake, so let's just make it completely ridiculous and way over the top, that sort of thing. You do get, you do see, again, beyond the flying and the blood drinking, they're supposed to have this sort of hypnosis power, mm-hmm. where almost like Jedi mind trick, these are not the droids you're looking for. They say something while looking in someone's eyes, and it's supposed to convince them of things. So you get this point where 2 police people show up at the house because there's evidently been noise complaints from the neighbors about things. And so Viago tries to hypnotize them, that you're not going to see anything unusual. And it doesn't seem to work at first because Viago's not the best at hypnosis. Mm-hmm. Vlad is much better at it, but Vlad's kind of busy dealing with the fight at the moment. There's a fight between the vampires. One of them's on the ceiling. The other one's trying to fly up to him, and Vlad is trying to hold that one back. And so Viago goes to answer the door and get the police, and the police are like, well, I certainly hope we don't see anything, unusual. That's why we're here. And so it's like, wait, are you or are you not hypnotized? And then they go into this scene where, someone's on the ceiling and someone's floating, and they're concerned because there's no fire smoke detectors whatsoever.
Which actually, is important for vampires since,
right?
Fire is one of the things that can kill them.
Yeah, we don't like fire, but it was so great because they're like, wait, do you see what I see? And then the guy points his flashlight, and it seems like at the guy on the ceiling. And I'm like, why did you not notice that, before the lights are all on? It's not like you can't see him on the ceiling. And then it's like, no smoke alarms. What is this? And then they go down to the basement where there's been the fight with the vampire hunter, and there's, burned bodies and whatever. And they're like, do you see that too? What? No smoke alarms down here. And then you see, it's just like, I love the police people. And again, this is taking place in New Zealand. So they've all got an accent in that very sort of, I want to call it British, but they're New Zealand. And is there another word for New Zealand people besides Kiwis?
I'm not sure.
That very sort of not American way of talking that we all just sort of associate with just a general Britishness, mm-hmm. even though, and I apologize, New Zealand people, I know you're not British. I do know that, but I can't explain this any other way of, almost the police people afterwards are like, oh, do you want to, go get a spot of tea or something? That's not what they say, but in that sort of very stereotypical, the way we think of British people, that manner of talking, I was just like, I love you guys. You're not noticing anything you should, but you're adorably very happy-go-lucky in these, hey, look, dead bodies and people floating and people turning into werewolf situations. And then you get to the ball that they've been preparing for, and it's not just vampires. There's also evidently witches. There's evidently zombies, and they have actually befriended a human, but they bring the human to the ball, which is a big no-no, and so now they have to escape, and then you sort of get to, okay, what do we do? And that becomes this whole long, big, not even action scene, because they don't really have the budget for that, but it's fighting off the vampires and zombies, and then fighting off the werewolves, and then, you know, sort of resolving where we are at in our lives after that, and then going on. So it was very fun. I haven't seen too many mockumentaries. I've seen Spinal Tap. I've seen Best in Show, which I did not really care for. So I would definitely put this up near the top. And at the end, I was so confused. I'm like, why do I even have this on my queue? What made me pick?
That's happened to you before, where something pops up on your queue and you're like, I didn't put... It's because I've broken into your Netflix account and I just add random things.
Sarah. Mm-hmm. But no, actually I finally figured it out at the end when the credits were going, because the actor who plays Viago, and I apologize because I'm probably going to butcher this, is Taika Waititi. Mm-hmm. Who was the director and the voice of Korg for Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, okay.
And I loved Korg in Thor Ragnarok. I thought that was, you know, he had some of my favorite moments, including the trying to start a revolution, but didn't print enough pamphlets. I was just like, I love you. That was great. I actually like Thor Ragnarok the best of the Thors. So I think I just went and was like, what else has this person done?
Right.
And then put it on my queue. And I'm actually kind of glad I did, because that was pretty fun.
All right, good to know.
Yes.
Vampire mockumentary.
Because, you know, we just don't have enough of those.
We don't. I can't think of any others.
Right? I don't know that there's ever been any other. But yes. So that is our show for today. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Movie Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Movie Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.